Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining me for our Retirement Planning Essentials session. Just a reminder that the information I'm covering is general information and I'm not taking into account your own personal situation. And we also have a team in the background to answer any questions that you might have as we go through this session. So please, if you do have any questions, just click on the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen and type your questions in there. When we talk about retirement planning, it can sound complex. There's products, there's different rules, there's numbers, there's decisions. But at its core, retirement planning really comes down to a few fundamentals. So today, in this session, we're going to take a step back from the detail and focus on those basics, the things that matter for everyone, regardless of when or how you plan to retire. The first thing you can do to boost your confidence, and probably the most powerful thing that you can do, is to know your numbers. First of all, know your retirement milestones. When can you access funds to support your retirement income needs? This is such as access to your superannuation, and also when can you access the government age pension? We then want to know, well, what are you spending now? Because you will spend a similar amount once you actually get to retirement. But this also allows you to identify if you've got any surplus cash flow at the moment. And then lastly, know how much you will need once you actually get to retirement. So what you're spending now, and then whatever you plan to do in retirement is going to be an additional cost on top of that. Now, a really important part of retirement planning is understanding, well, where is that income going to come from? So in Australia, retirement income is generally built from a few building blocks, and most people rely on a combination of these, not just one. So in Australia, the four building blocks that we have of retirement income, or probably the main four building blocks, are your superannuation. It's the government age pension. It's any savings that you've put aside, and any investments that you might have access to. Now, not everyone is going to have all four of these, and they won't necessarily contribute to your income equally. But what really matters is understanding which ones apply to you. A really powerful first step in retirement planning is simply knowing, well, what you already have. So I'd encourage everyone to take a moment to jot down, well, what is your current super balance? What other savings have you got set aside? Do you have any other assets or perhaps investments that you hold? Now, we do have our retirement planning guide. You can see the link there, and there is a link to this in our resources tab. So I'd encourage everyone to download this guide onto your laptop or computer or whatever you're using to join us today. And on page 10, there's a handy section in there to note all of this down. And then once you understand what building blocks you have, it becomes much easier to see how your retirement income could come together and then start identifying, well, what gaps are there, or what questions do you have? And then that can help you plan your next steps with confidence. Now, we've looked at the possible income sources in retirement. It's important to understand, as I said, when you can gain access to these. And I said before, knowing when you can access these retirement milestones is going to give you a clearer picture to make a plan, but also boost your confidence. So we can see the first milestone there is age 60, and this is known as your preservation age. What this means is that you can access your super tax-free if you turn 60 and you satisfy what's called a condition of release. So a condition of release is you cease an employment arrangement, or you might retire, or you may even be able to start a transition to retirement strategy while you are still working and access up to 10% of your super balance. The next milestone we can see there is age 65. Now, this provides you with full access to your superannuation regardless of your work status. And then the last milestone we can see there is age 67, and that is government age pension qualifying age. So take a moment to think about, well, what do you want from retirement? For some of us, it might involve travel, whether that's overseas or perhaps, you might want to hitch the caravan up and travel around Australia. For some of us, it might involve just spending more time with our grandchildren, or perhaps you'd like to volunteer. My mum, she had a double lung transplant 5 years ago, and so she decided that when she retired, she'd like to give back, and so she volunteers for the Foundation. So, what does this look like for you? Once you've mapped out what retirement might look like, that's then going to feed directly into our next consideration, which is how much will your retirement cost? And this is the most common question I receive when I'm out and about talking to our members. And unfortunately, there is no one size fits all when it comes down to how much our retirement is going to cost. And that's because everyone's retirement income needs are going to be unique. And that's because it depends on, well, what your retirement will look like. And because these costs can quickly add up, it's important to think about, well, what are any new costs that you may need to account for in retirement? A couple of things that you might want to consider is your housing situation. Are you considering downsizing? Perhaps you don't need the big family home anymore. The kids might have moved out. Or are you going to stay in the family home? But are there additional things you need to consider, such as modifications, or perhaps there's renovations that you need to consider? Transport. If there's two of you about to retire and you've got two cars, perhaps you won't need two cars. You might be able to cut back and just use one car if you're not having to travel to work every day. This is something I saw my parents-in-law do. They've gone down to one car. Daily travel expenses, well, as I said, you may not have to fill the car up with fuel to get to work, so you may be able to save on transport costs there. However, your overall running costs may increase with potentially more time being spent at home. So again, this comes back to knowing your numbers. What do you spend now? Have you done a budget? Do you know what your fixed expenses are and what's going to change once you get to retirement? Now, to help unpack and understand retirement costs, the Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia release a benchmark standard for what they consider a modest lifestyle in retirement and a comfortable lifestyle in retirement. And this is to give you an idea around how much income you might actually need. Now, there's a few assumptions with the figures I'm about to show you. These are based on you're aged around 67, you own your own home outright, and you are relatively healthy. Now, just keep in mind that these are a guide. They're not an actual representation of what you can or what you can't achieve in retirement. So there's a lot on the screen here, so let me talk you through it. So what ASFA is saying is for a single person to have a comfortable lifestyle in retirement, they would need currently just under 55,000 per year. In contrast, for a modest lifestyle, they would need around 35,500. So you can see they are quite different. Well, what does a comfortable lifestyle look like? Well, you can see a couple of examples down here. You've got private health insurance. You might have an annual domestic trip, and you might have an overseas trip once every 7 years. You can afford your leisure activities or perhaps eating out with friends and family. In contrast, a modest lifestyle is you've got basic private health insurance. You may have an annual domestic trip, but you're certainly not traveling overseas. And you've got the occasional leisure activities. So you can see they are quite different. So you can see the numbers there for a couple for a comfortable is 77, just over 77,000, and for a modest, just over 51,000. Now, this column here is how much ASFA is saying you would need for a modest lifestyle in retirement if you are still renting. So you can see it is higher. So for a single person, just over 50,000, and for a couple, 67,000. Now, it's important to consider the difference between what these retirement standards are and what the current government age pension is currently paying. So the full age pension at the moment for a single person is just over 31,000, and for a couple it's just over 47,000. Now it's important to note that we can see the age pension and the modest are slightly different. The modest lifestyle is considered better than living off the age pension alone. But this is where your superannuation, even if you don't have a lot of it, can make a really big difference to your retirement lifestyle because it can help and work hand in hand with the age pension to bring you up to perhaps a modest lifestyle or even in between a modest and a comfortable lifestyle. So, as I said, these numbers are a guide to get you to start thinking about, well, how much might you need once you're in retirement? And ASFA have also released what the super balance is that you would require at the age of 67 to have a comfortable retirement. So for a single person, they're saying you would need 630,000 in your super, and for a couple, 730,000. Now, a simple starting point is looking at, well, what are you spending now? And I've already mentioned around, have you got a budget? And if not, that's a really important step in planning for your retirement. Looking at your current expenses, this is going to give you a baseline, even though some of these costs may change once you're actually in retirement. Things like housing, food, we've got utilities, our insurances, they often continue while our work-related costs, such as commuting, may reduce. Now, again, referring to our retirement planning guide, in page 12 of the guide, there is a section in there where you can note down any of your ongoing costs, but you can also look at a budgeting app or tool that you might have access to. So Money Smart have a great budgeting planner tool, but perhaps you've got access through your own banking app to one of those tools as well. Another important consideration is how long your retirement might last. Many Australians can spend 20 or even 30 years in retirement, which means costs need to be planned for over the long term, not just in the early years. And that's why reviewing and updating your estimates over time is really important. So you can see on the screen there, average life expectancy. Now we want to anticipate that we will live longer than the average person. So look at what the average life expectancy is for your age and add on another 5 years, which will help when you're doing your projections. Because as I said, we want to anticipate you'll live longer than the average person. So to get a better idea of your own situation, you might like to check out our super projection calculator on our website. And there is a link to this calculator in our resources tab. This calculator will help you work out how much super you might have once you actually get to retirement, how long that super is going to last, but also you can see the difference that any additional contributions you make now can make to your balance once you actually get to retirement. So I want to take you through an example of how this calculator works. Before we jump into the calculator, it's worth taking a moment to explain how it works and the assumptions behind it. This isn't a crystal ball, it's a planning tool. It helps you explore different scenarios and see how today's decisions might affect your retirement over time. So when you first open it, the calculator starts with some default assumptions about contributions, there's fees, and investment returns, how the cost of living and wages will increase over time, life expectancy, as well as retirement age. Now, these are just a starting point. Some are required by regulation, others are set by Australian Super. Assumptions are just that. They're assumptions, and you can change a number of these when you're using the calculator. Your results will change depending on what inputs and assumptions you've used. One assumption that we're commonly asked about is inflation. So by default, the calculator uses price inflation or CPI. So the rising cost of everyday living. With this assumption, this assumes that your lifestyle in retirement is going to stay broadly the same with your costs increasing over time. You can also switch to wage inflation. So this reflects how incomes tend to grow while people are working, and that can be useful if you expect your spending or lifestyle expectations to increase over time. Trying both options can change the picture quite a bit, which is why the calculator is there to be explored, not just viewed once. So, to bring this to life, let's walk through a hypothetical example. So, meet Julie and Phil. We'll start at the About You section. Now, Julie is 55 and she's earning around 90,000 per year. She'd also like to include Phil so that they can see how they're tracking as a couple. So Phil is also 55 and is earning slightly less, around 85,000 per year. Next, we're going to enter their current super balances. And this is why knowing your numbers is so important because it gives you a clearer view of what your future might look like. So Julie has around 300,000 in her super and she isn't making any additional contributions. Next, we have Phil. So Phil has about 275,000 in his super account, and he also isn't making any extra contributions at this stage. So moving on, we then choose their retirement age. So Julie and Phil are aiming to retire at the age of 63. Now that's earlier than the age pension age of 67, which, as you can see, is the default age used by the calculator. But 63 is the goal that they've decided works for them. Now, the calculator then asks about retirement income. So by default, the calculator assumes that the retirement income will be 75% of their current combined net income as a starting point. But Julie and Phil, they've decided they'll actually need around 90,000 per year in today's dollars in order to feel comfortable in retirement. Now, they don't expect any other income, such as rental income or overseas pensions. So they do choose to include the government age pension. Now, next, we put in they've actually got 50,000 in their bank, so we'll enter that as their savings. And we're going to select that they're a couple and also confirm that they are homeowners. So from here, we can see the results. Now, the calculator estimates a combined super balance of around 858,000 at retirement. The chart also shows how their income may be funded over time. So in the early years of retirement, before the age of 67, you can see that they rely entirely on their own savings. Once they turn 67, you can see that the estimated age pension starts to contribute as well as their superannuation. Now, you'll also notice a life expectancy marker at the age of 87. So, this is based on the Australian Bureau of Statistics data. And just a reminder, these figures are just estimates. So, they're designed to guide your planning, not provide certainty. Now, remember, I mentioned inflation. So, by default, this example uses price inflation or CPI. But Julie and Phil might want to explore what happens if they switch over to wage inflation. When they do, you can see that their projected super balance at retirement stays the same, but their income picture changes. Their own savings are expected to run out earlier, meaning they're going to rely more heavily on the age pension once they're later in retirement. They can also explore what difference making extra contributions might make. So, in this example, Julie and Phil each contribute an extra $100 per week before tax from the age of 55 until their retirement age at 63. So let's have a look now. So with that change, the projected super balance has increased to around 937,000. And we can see that their savings are expected to last longer. So that just shows how relatively small changes can meaningfully improve their outcomes over time. The calculator lets you test many other scenarios too. So you might want to go in and have a look at changing your investment strategy. You might want to adjust your retirement age. You might decide to explore different age pension assumptions, as well as factoring in future assets or seeing how perhaps working part time might affect your outcome. Overall, the calculator is a starting point. It's designed to help you explore options, understand the trade offs, and see how today's decisions can shape your retirement outcome. So I just encourage everyone to jump in, test the different scenarios, and see how you're tracking. So thank you for joining me for this session. Can you please now make your way back to the lobby for the next session? Thank you, everyone.